Chapter 331. Don't kill me. I'll talk. The leader of the assassins was scared out of his wits. He divulged every detail, not daring to leave any stone unturned. He revealed the person who hired him and even their whereabouts. He spilled everything. Dustin nodded after he was done listening and dealt with the assassins, before leaving the building once again. While others often took their time seeking revenge, Dustin sought his revenge the very same day. Otherwise, he would lose sleep over it. In the meantime, in the bathtub of a luxurious hotel, the white-haired young man, Wilson White, was speaking to Rhys on the phone. Don't worry, Mr. Langford, my men are skilled. They won't leave a trace. From tomorrow onwards, you will never see that punk again. That'll be best. I don't wish for any surprises tomorrow. Of course, I assure you everything will go smoothly, and you'll be bringing that beauty home without a hitch. He grinned. All right, that's all. That woman won't let me touch her. I need to get another woman to satisfy my desires. Wilson chuckled. Then, I won't disturb your fun. After a few more exchanges of words, he hung up. He then put on a robe and walked out of the bathroom. Hey, beautiful, I'm coming. Wilson was smiling happily, prepared to make love to a beautiful model he met today. However, he froze as he entered the bedroom. The model was missing, there was only a man seated on the bed. That man was Dustin. How are you here? Wilson's expression changed. Didn't he already send the assassins? Why was he still alive? Your men are dead. And it's your turn now. Any last words? He spoke lazily. Wilson's eye twitched, and he screamed at Dustin, putting up a front. I'm warning you, punk. You better not try anything. I'm with the Langford family. I know. So what? Dustin was stone-faced. If you dare touch me, not only you but all of your family and friends will be doomed. Wilson threatened. It's always the same script. Can't you come up with something new? Dustin reached out and grabbed him in a chokehold, lifting him by his neck. Ugh. Wilson couldn't breathe, and his face turned red. He shook in fear as he felt he was close to death's door. Don't kill me, I'll tell you a secret. William panicked after seeing Dustin's murderous gaze and started begging for his life instead. Oh. What secret? Let's hear it. Dustin raised his eyebrow, intrigued. I don't think you know the real reason Dahlia is marrying Rhys. It isn't for material wealth. She was forced. Wilson released a bombshell. Dustin's eyebrows knitted together. Explain. What do you mean? William pointed at Dustin's fingers. Dustin loosened his grip slightly. Out of breath, William finally spoke. To get Dahlia by his side, Rhys set up a trap and painted James as a murderer. He not only threatened to send her brother to jail, but he also threatened to send you back to prison. She only gave in to the marriage because of you. Dustin felt like he was struck by lightning with this revelation. He had misunderstood her. He'd thought she married into a wealthy family for power and wealth. But it turned out, she was only sacrificing herself for his safety. At that moment, he felt a pang of regret. He regretted not getting the story straight, and he regretted slapping her. Dahlia, oh, Dahlia, why are you so foolish? He clenched his jaw and left the place immediately. Chapter 332. Dustin kept dialing and making calls while he drove. However, no matter how many times he dialed, Dahlia never answered. For some reason, Dustin was anxious. It felt as if something important was slowly slipping out of his grasp. He stepped on the accelerator and headed straight for Nicholson Villa. Ever since they got divorced, he'd never set foot in that place again. But at that moment, he couldn't care less. After he arrived, he rushed to the entrance, ringing the doorbell and pounding on the door persistently. How rude. Can't you knock gently? Following the annoyed voice, the door opened. Dustin. What are you doing here? Florence frowned, looking upset. Dustin went straight to the point. Where's Dahlia? I need to see her. HMPH. What makes you think you can just barge in here to see her? Get lost. Florence responded harshly. She was about to close the door as she spoke when the door was blocked by a foot. With a solemn expression, Dustin said, I know Dahlia is inside. I have something to tell her, please let her know. There is no need to do so. She doesn't want to see you. Florence gave him a contemptuous look and continued, let me tell you. My daughter's engagement party with Mr. Langford is tomorrow. So, from tomorrow onward, she'll be known as Mrs. Langford. Someone like you will never match up to him. So, please stop disturbing my daughter. Dahlia cannot marry Luis. Dustin frowned. I know the truth. I know she was forced. She doesn't need to sacrifice herself. I can solve everything. You can't solve shit. Florence glared at him. Rhys. I'm warning you not to poke your nose where it doesn't belong. It's a blessing for my daughter to have the chance to marry the Langfords. I'll fight you to death if you get in the way. Is wealth more important than Dahlia's happiness? Dustin reasoned with her. Luis is a typical playboy with a volatile temper and violent tendencies. If Dahlia marries him, she'll be walking into her own misery. Nonsense. Florence erupted in anger. Rhys. You better not spout nonsense. Luis was brought up in a wealthy family with class and manners. He's miles better than you will ever be. To her, Dustin only said those words out of jealousy. He was slandering Luis since he knew he wasn't Luis' competition. She didn't realize he was such a malicious person. Dahlia, I know you're in there. Can you please come out and talk to me? Seeing that Florence wouldn't budge, he raised his voice in hopes that Dahlia could hear him from inside. Shut up. I'm warning you. My daughter is not at home. If you continue to cause trouble for us, I'll call the police. Florence threatened him. Dustin ignored her and continued yelling, Dahlia, listen up. I don't need your sympathy. Don't make decisions on your own. Do you think a mere Luis can hurt me? You must be crazy. We're divorced. What makes you think you can use your life to save mine? Can you not think so highly of yourself? His tirade echoed throughout the villa. Hey. You've got some nerve. Florence grabbed a broom and was about to hit him in her fury when a clear voice rang out. Mom, let me talk to him. Dahlia finally walked out. Dahlia, why did you come out? Just let me deal with this insolent brat. Florence was clearly upset. Chapter 333. Some things are better discussed in person. Dahlia shook her head. Fine. I'll give you 3 minutes. Break it off cleanly. Without another word, Florence went to stand by one side. After all, tomorrow, their family would move to Estonia and live the life of the wealthy. By then, a lowlife like Dustin would never have the chance to see her daughter again. Didn't you say we'd never have anything to do with each other? Why are you here? Dahlia looked Dustin straight in the eye. Dustin responded seriously, I've found out the truth. I know Luis forced you into this, but you don't need to get married to him. I can solve all your problems. Dahlia was momentarily stumped before she put up a polite smile. I don't know where you heard that, but I'm getting married to Luis on my own accord. I wasn't forced, but thank you for your concern. So what if he knew? It wouldn't solve anything. Her marriage to Luis was a strategic union between the Langfords and the Nicholsons. Anyone who dared stand in the way of their marriage would be going up against two majorly influential families. How many people dared make enemies out of the two families in the whole of Belerno? That was why, even if Dustin now knew the truth, it didn't change anything. It would only cause him more trouble. That's not true. Dustin's brows knitted. You don't even like him. Why are you getting married to him? Does that matter? Luis can give me wealth and riches, as well as power and status, aren't those enough? Dahlia smiled faintly. You're lying. I know you're not the kind of person Dustin wouldn't give up. Stop joking. Do you really know me? She scoffed. Oh, Dustin. People should live life realistically, especially women. Instead of working so hard to make a name for myself, wouldn't it be better to marry a wealthy man? I can live an easy life. Why not seize the opportunity? Dustin's gaze was intense. No. You don't mean that. That's what I think. It doesn't matter whether or not you believe me. I'm tired. I'm going to rest now. Please go back. That was the last thing Dahlia said before turning inside. Did you hear that? She's tired. Now get lost. Florence raised her broom aggressively. Dahlia Nicholson. Don't you dare think you actually helped me. I'll never be grateful for your actions. Dustin stood by the door and continued with rightful indignation. Oh, and one more thing. I hate being indebted to someone. I will do everything I can to stop this marriage. I will never let you marry Luis. Do you hear me? Bastard. If you try anything, I won't hesitate to beat you to death. Florence was anxious and raised the broom in her hand, about to land a hit, when Dustin grabbed it and broke it easily. Dahlia Nicholson. I'll be at the engagement party tomorrow afternoon. All you need to do is nod, and I'll take you out of there. You don't need to think about the consequences. Just follow your heart. I will make sure there is nothing to worry about. I will also ensure your safety. Please just trust me. Have absolute faith in me this one time. Dustin finally left after his speech. Since he had found out the truth, he would not allow her to walk into her own misery. It didn't matter if they were the Langfords or the Nicholsons. If they angered him, he would annihilate them all. As Dahlia listened to Dustin's determined speech, she leaned against the door and sank to the floor. She ended up crouching on the ground as tears streamed down her face. Biting her lips, she wrapped herself in her arms and tried her best to muffle her cries. Oh, Dustin. Why are you so foolish? Couldn't you just let go? Why do you need to put yourself in danger like that? Chapter 334. The next morning, at Empire Hotel, a grand wedding was in full swing. The union of the two prominent families had caused a sensation throughout Swinton. Countless businessmen, wealthy individuals, and high-ranking officials arrived with great anticipation. Hundreds of luxury wedding cars were parked at the hotel square, occupying almost every available space. The entire street had also been cordoned off specially for today's wedding ceremony. Dressed in his groom's attire, Luis personally welcomed the guests at the entrance of the lobby. Of course, he only greeted those who held status and influence, while the ordinary guests were attended to by his men. Mr. Langford. At that moment, Wilson walked up to him and said in a hushed voice, "There's a turn of events. Dustin's not dead yet, and the assassins I sent out are all missing." What did you say? What's the point of me hiring you if you can't handle a small matter like this? Luis frowned. I'm sorry. I underestimated that punk. Wilson lowered his head in shame. Forget about it. After today, I'll send someone personally to deal with him. Luis didn't bother making a fuss out of it. Mr. Langford, there's something else. Wilson hesitated to speak. Luis was slightly unhappy. What now? In a whisper, Wilson continued, I heard that Dustin might disrupt the wedding today. Disrupt the wedding? Luis was taken aback for a moment before he laughed out loud. Are you joking? My men are all here. Would he dare act rashly here? It's best to consider all possibilities. Wilson smiled apologetically. He can try if he wants. I'm itching to see how he'll barge into my den. Luis sneered coldly. An ordinary citizen, trying to go against him. He didn't mind shedding blood today at the party if it came to it. In the meantime, in one of the rooms of the hotel, Dahlia sat in front of the dressing table, in a daze. Ever since Dustin came looking for her yesterday, she has been on edge, worried he might attempt something foolish. For this reason, she'd been sending him messages and making calls, but she never received a response. It worried her more as he ignored her. Dahlia, why are you sulking? You should be smiling. It's your big day. Right then, Florence walked in with a grin and started picking out Dahlia's jewelry. Dahlia suddenly asked, Mom, do you think Dustin will come today? Why do you care? Florence's brows furrowed. I've looked around the area. It's heavily guarded here, with security personnel inside and out. If Dustin dares break in, he'll probably be beaten up badly. Dahlia's concern deepened upon hearing her mother's words. Dahlia, stop thinking about it. That punk is all talk. He won't really come. He's not stupid. Why would he seek his own demise? Florence took advantage of the situation and comforted her. It was clear to her that her daughter had unresolved feelings. Unfortunately, they could never be together. Besides, it was a lifelong dream of Florence to have her daughter marry into a wealthy family. How would she allow someone to ruin her dream that easily? I hope so, Dahlia sighed, but her expression remained troubled. All right, it's about time. Let's go. Florence smiled, leading Dahlia out. At the venue, the seats were already filled with distinguished guests. Amidst the applause, Rhys walked up the stage slowly. He received the microphone from the officiant and said with a face full of smiles, "Dear guests, family, and friends, thank you for attending my wedding. Today is the most important day of my life. Even though I've only known Dahlia for a short time, from the moment I laid my eyes on her, I knew she was the only woman I would want to marry in this lifetime. I hope all of you present here today will bear witness to our grand wedding." As soon as he spoke those words, the crowd erupted in thunderous applause and cheers. Chapter 335. Here comes the bride. The officiant announced. Amidst enthusiastic applause, Dahlia walked in. She looked gorgeous in a beautiful white gown. And took her place at the altar on stage. Oh. My God. The bride is so pretty. She looks like an angel. They look so good together. They are truly a match made in heaven. Following her appearance, the atmosphere grew increasingly lively as the crowd looked on in admiration. The ceremony officially began with Dahlia's parents, John and Florence, seated in the front row alongside Louis' fourth uncle. Seeing the both of Thane standing at the altar together, Florence couldn't hide the smile on her face. All her hopes and prayers for her daughter to marry into a wealthy family were finally materializing. While John wore a smile, his eyes betrayed a complexity of emotions. Despite his prolonged absences, he had a basic understanding of what went on at home. As for Louis' uncle, he had an impassive expression right from the start, not showing much of a reaction. Dahlia is so lucky to be able to marry Louis. Not far away, Dakota watched the new couple in jealousy. If only she hadn't been engaged, she would have been the one up there instead. Ha! It seems like she's lucky, but she's actually not. With Louis' personality, I'm afraid Dahlia won't be having a good married life. Jane shook her head. She knew of Louis' reputation. It was finally time to exchange vows as the officiant said, "Dahlia, do you take Louis to be your wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, as long as you both shall live?" While Louis was smiling widely, Dahlia looked troubled. After a short silence, he finally noticed that she didn't seem inclined to speak. Thinking the bride didn't hear him, the officiant repeated himself, "Dahlia, do you take Louis to be your wedded husband?" In the end, Dahlia remained silent. She truly did not wish to get married to Louis. She didn't even understand why. That was why she hesitated at the last moment. What's happening? Why isn't the bride saying anything? Is she regretting it? As a result of her actions, a wave of dissonant murmurs swiftly swept across the venue. What's the meaning of this, Dahlia? Are you embarrassing me on purpose? Louis narrowed his eyes, his expression menacing. If you dare humiliate me today, our previous agreement will be thrown out the window. I can't guarantee what will happen then. Dahlia clenched her fists at his words, finally giving in. She was about to exchange her vows when a resounding crash reverberated through the hall. The doors had been kicked open, and at the same time, a tall figure strutted in proudly. "Dustin. Why are you here?" Florence slammed her hand on the table and shot up to her feet. Feeling shocked and furious. "I'm here to steal the bride." Chapter 336. I'm here to Steal the bride. Dustin's every step resounded through the entire hall like a loud bell. His footsteps could be heard over the quiet hall. The crowd had their eyes wide open, and their expressions were filled with shock. Nobody could have imagined that someone dared object to the union between the Langford family and the Nicholson family. Oh my goodness. Who is this punk? He dares disrupt the wedding. Does he have a death wish? You have to give him credit for being so brave. He actually dared to provoke the two powerful families. Interesting. This is definitely interesting. Seems like a good show is about to start. After a momentary silence, the crowd erupted in frenzied discussion, pointing and gossiping incessantly. Dustin. Staring at the familiar face, Dahlia's expression revealed how happy she was. However, that happiness was quickly replaced with worry. Although she was grateful and touched, she knew his actions would bring about a disaster. By disrupting the wedding, it meant that he was challenging both the Langfords and the Nicholsons. Is this punk insane? He's making a scene all by himself. Where did he get the courage? Dakota was astonished and couldn't believe it. What an idiot. Jane pursed her lips. It was as if she was looking at a dead man. She knew Rhys had already made preparations, and stationed numerous security personnel around the hotel. Dustin had sent himself into the lion's den by barging in here. Insolent bastard. Rhys' expression turned cold. He felt the urge to kill rising within him. He couldn't believe Dustin really came to meet his demise. Rhys. I'm warning you to get your ass out of here. Otherwise, you'll bear the consequences. Florence screamed in frustration. Her daughter was one step away from getting married into a wealthy family. She would make an enemy out of anyone who dared ruin her dreams. Dahlia, I'm here. Dustin ignored all the criticisms and threats surrounding him and walked up the stage with deliberate steps. His determined gaze was fixed on the person in front of him. What are you doing here? Go back immediately. Dahlia's brows were furrowed, and she looked anxious. She had noticed the number of bodyguards of the Langford family approaching the stage. Dustin's expression was solemn. I told you. I won't let you get married to Rhys. I'm definitely taking you away today. Are you crazy? This is not the place for you to act so recklessly. Just leave. Dahlia made fervent gestures to urge him to leave. In a serious tone, Dustin told her, I know what you're worried about, but please believe me. I promise there won't be anything to worry about after this. It's no use, you don't know who you're up against. Dahlia shook her head vehemently. She knew he could fight. She also knew he had the Harmon family backing him. But even the Harmon family was no match for the Langfords. Not to mention, the Langfords also had the Nicholsons behind them. Dustin suddenly asked, Dahlia, in all these years, with everything that has happened, have I ever lied to you? No. She shook her head firmly. Since I've never lied to you, please believe me once more. Dustin extended his hand as an invitation. Dahlia went silent. Her heart was conflicted. She longed to leave with Dustin. Even if that meant eloping and wandering the entire world with him, she would do it gladly. However, there were far too many factors to consider. Dahlia, you don't need to think about anything else. Leave everything to me. Just this once, let yourself be a little selfish, Dustin said, full of sincerity. Dahlia bit her lips. It seemed like she had come to a decision. She took a deep breath. All right. She would be selfish this one time. She stopped thinking about the consequences and extended her hand with resolve, holding tight to Dustin's hand. At that moment, Dustin formed a smile. So did she. Dahlia Nicholson. Do you know what you're doing? Seeing them holding hands, Rhys' expression was laced with extreme fury. In front of such a large crowd, his fiancée regretted her decision and decided to elope with another man. Nothing was more humiliating than that. Chapter 338. Because of Maximus' appearance, the situation turned against the Langford family. While a few highly skilled martial artists from the Langford family were eager to take action, they were cautious, afraid of hurting Rhys. Both of you should leave first. Leave this place to me, Dustin, Maximus said confidently. After the battle at Mount Halg, he'd finally achieved divinity, and his skills improved tremendously. Leave. Louise sneered. Where do you think you can hide? Even if you survive today, you will never escape our wrath. Dustin was about to leave when he heard Louise and stopped in his tracks. Turning around, he asked coldly, "Are you threatening me?" "So what if I am?" Louise laughed diabolically. He had no qualms about confronting Dustin. "I don't know how you met this friend of yours, but if you think he can go up against me single-handedly, then you're too naive for your own good." "Do you really think you're that powerful?" Dustin questioned him. "Against you? Absolutely." Louise grinned. "Not only you, but Dahlia and everyone around her will get a taste of our revenge. I'm going to make your lives a living hell." Dahlia found herself unsettled by his words. In the end, she couldn't avoid the very thing she dreaded most. When she made the decision to elope with Dustin, she put her entire family in danger. That burden was overwhelming for her to bear. "How about it? Are you scared now?" Louise was pleased with Dustin's silence. "Rhys, if you don't want to die like a chicken, get down on your knees immediately. Also, you're going to send your woman to my bedside personally. Perhaps, then, I will let you live." He'd just finished speaking when a resounding slap landed on his cheek, and Dustin's bright red handprint was clearly imprinted on his face. "Huh." Louise cradled his burning face, dazed. Everyone else looked on in shock. Dustin must have truly gone insane to actually strike Louise in public. "You dare hit me?" Louis' expression grew dark as he finally came back to his senses. "So what if I did? That slap was for your shameless boasting." As he spoke, he raised his hand and landed another vicious slap on Louis' face. "That was for your arrogance." Slap. "That was for threatening Dahlia." Slap. "That was for being unrepentant." Slap. Dustin slapped him left and right, with every ear-splitting slap landing heavily on his face. The force turned his face bloody and swollen beyond recognition, and he lost a few teeth in between the slaps. As the crowd took in Louis' battered state, they were shocked into silence. They knew blood would be shed today. Nobody would survive when the Langfords sought revenge. "Why you're dead meat. Everyone related to you will pay as well." The members of the Langford family screamed one after another, their anger reaching a tipping point. "Dahlia, leave this place with Maximus first. I'll handle the rest," Dustin said as he turned to look behind him. "What are you going to do?" Dahlia's brows knitted. She couldn't explain the uneasiness she felt. At that moment, regret washed over her as she realized the gravity of her actions. Dustin wasn't only taking her away from Louis. He was also challenging death head-on. "Don't worry. I'll be fine." He smiled. "Maximus, bring her away to somewhere safe." "All right." Maximus nodded. "Dahlia, please follow me. Dustin knows what he's doing. He won't be in any danger." Chapter 339. But Dahlia wanted to say more. "Just go. I'll be distracted if you're here," Dustin interrupted. Left with no choice, Dahlia bobbed her head in agreement helplessly in the end. Since things had come to this point, there was no turning back. As long as Dustin could come back unscathed, she was willing to give up everything and roam all over the world with him. After making sure that Dahlia had left safely, Dustin's gaze scanned around the place and then fixed on the Nicholson family. "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and leave. Let's go." Dakota and Jane exchanged a glance. Then, they turned around and left on the spot. Dahlia's breach of promise had caused the Langfords to have a fallout with the Nicholsons. If the latter continued to stay there any longer, trouble might land upon them. "What a jinx. Look at what you have gotten us into." Florence stomped her feet in anger before fleeing away. Now that the wedding ceremony had been ruined, the Nicholsons' dream of living a wealthy and comfortable life went up in smoke. Most importantly, they had offended the Langford family. From now on, their days would no longer be peaceful. At that time, Louis's fourth uncle, Kingston Langford, suddenly stood up and said flatly, "You've got a nerve of steel, young man. No one has ever dared to humiliate us in public. You're the first, and of course, you will also be the last. Frankly speaking, I'm quite impressed with your courage. But today is the day you die." As he spoke, he made a hand gesture. Right then, a large group of armed guards barged in from every direction and surrounded Dustin, leaving him no way to escape. "This is bad. Mr. Kingston is doing it for real. That brat is going to be done for." He snatched the bride away blatantly and even got Mr. Louis red in the face. Even if he has 10 lives, they are not even enough to pay back for what he has done. Well, he only has himself to blame. The guests couldn't help but mutter among themselves as they watched Dustin get trapped in the middle. "If you let go of Louis now, I will let you die in one piece." Kingston had an indifferent expression as if he had control over everything. "Are you trying to scare me off since you have the strength in numbers?" Dustin glanced around without feeling any ounce of fear. "Yeah. You've got that right. Sure. Let's see who has more people, then." Dustin took out his phone and dialed a number. 5 minutes later, the door of the banquet hall burst open. Mason rushed in aggressively with hundreds of gangsters. "Mason Sims from the Dre Group is here with the gang under Mr. Rhys orders." At the sight of this, everyone was stunned for a moment before they burst into laughter. "Is this a joke? Are you trying to fight against us with this group of thugs? HMPH. What an ignorant person. You're thinking too highly of yourself. I'll be so disappointed if this is your trump card." The group of guards led by Kingston had disdainful looks on their faces. They couldn't believe that even some random thugs had the guts to provoke the Langford family. "Hey, Rhys. Are you in your right mind? Do you actually think that you can outdo us with this bunch of small fry?" Louis laughed uncontrollably. However, the smile on his face immediately dropped when the next group of people rushed into the hall. This time, Hunter was in the lead. "The president of the Chamber of Commerce, Hunter Anderson, is here to listen to Mr. Rhys orders." Seconds later, another group of people showed up, and it went on for a few more rounds. "The chief inspector of the Investigation Bureau, Aspen Cruiser, is here to assist Mr. Rhys. Roderick Brooks from the Brooks Corporation is willing to do his best to help Mr. Rhys out. The mayor of Swinton, Alex Granville, is willing to stay till the end with Mr. Rhys." As the groups barged in one after another, the ridicule directed at Dustin gradually disappeared. It was replaced with shock and fear. Chapter 340. Looking at the groups of elites barging into the banquet hall one after another, all the guests at the scene were dumbfounded. None of them expected Dustin to have such great connections. All he did was make a call, and hundreds of people came over to assist him. Not only were there underground organizations and official armed forces, but there was also help from a business tycoon. On top of that, even the mayor of Swinton was here to back him up in person. In other words, as long as Dustin said the word, all the forces in Swinton could be under his command. That was a terrifying connection he had. No wonder he dared to be insolent in front of the Langford family. He had come prepared. Now the Langfords were not fighting against Dustin alone, but the whole of Swinton. Who is he exactly? How come he can have influence over so many forces? The guests exchanged glances with one another, shocked at the turn of events. At that moment, the arrogant Langford family finally sensed that the current situation wasn't favoring them. Even though these forces wouldn't be able to weaken their foothold, the former could still bring trouble to the latter. After all, the Langfords' power was in Stonia. Requesting immediate help was simply impossible. "It looks like I have underestimated you." After being stunned for a moment, Kingston quickly regained his composure and said, "But if you think that you can win against us with their help, then you're wrong." The Langford family had been an influential family in Stonia for generations. Whether it was power or connections, they were way stronger than the ones in Swinton. "Rhys. Indeed, you have more people with you. But what can you do about it? Louis sneered. They are just a bunch of shrimp. In his eyes, Swinton's powers were akin to ants. He could even easily get rid of them if he wanted. This was how strong an affluent family from Estonia was. If they can't, what about me? Right then, a loud and clear voice pierced the air. A well-dressed, handsome man walked dauntlessly into the banquet hall with a few female officers. He carried such an overwhelming aura with him that everyone lowered their heads subconsciously the moment they saw him. Adam Spanner, the god of war. Kingston's eyes widened in fear. It had never occurred to him that the chief commander of the West Army, who was in charge of 300,000 soldiers, would appear here. What's wrong, Uncle Kingston? Do you know him? Louis quickly noticed that something wasn't right. That is Adam Spanner, Kingston exclaimed. Hearing that, Louis was stunned and could no longer maintain his composure. What? He is Adam. As the heir of the wealthiest family in Estonia, Adam was not only a wonderkind but also a living legend. His outstanding battle achievements at a young age had earned him the title of God of War, and the command of hundreds of thousands of soldiers. In the whole of Estonia, there was barely anyone of his age who could be on par with him. That's quite arrogant of you. How dare you bully my friend? As Adam strode in, the crowd automatically stepped aside to make way for him. Friend. Could it be him? Kingston's gaze shifted to Dustin in shock. How could someone from this insignificant place know Adam? Kingston thought. Mr. Kingston, you said that these people weren't able to drive the Langfords away. But what about with my help? Adam stared piercingly at him, his eyes filled with provocation. Mr. Spanner, what brings you here?